Greetings, everyone. I am Pete Pardo from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of What's Hot with Sea of Tranquility, bringing you new album reviews all the damn time. Today, we're going to take a look at the brand new album here in 2025 from Atomic Rooster called Circle the Sun. Now, you might be saying to yourself, but wait a second, Pete. How is that possible? Because didn't Vincent Crane pass away a long time ago? Yes. Hasn't John Ducan also been laid to rest for quite a long time? Yes. So how is it that we have a Atomic Rooster album in 2025? Well, that's a great question. And I'm going to answer it for you right now. So apparently, the widow of Vincent Crane, a number of years ago, a decade or so ago, had given permission, blessing for Pete French, who sang on the In Hearing Of album, also sang with many other bands, right, to resurrect Atomic Rooster along with Steve Bolton, who played guitar on the Made in England album. So Pete French was only in the band for about a year. Steve Bolton on guitars was only in the band for about 2 years back in the 70s. Yet they have had access to the Atomic Rooster name and have been out there touring as Atomic Rooster. Well, fast forward a few years, Pete French had decided to drop out of this incarnation because he just couldn't handle the touring commitments. Pete's getting up there in age, right? So he's no longer in the band. So basically it is Steve Bolton, brief time member of Atomic Rooster in like 71, 72, 73, something like that, who has joined forces with Adrian Gautry on keyboards and lead vocals. He's now been in the band since 2017. Shug Millage on bass guitar, also in the band since 2016, and fairly new to the band on drums, Paul Everett, like I said, along with Steve Bolton on guitars and a little bit of vocals. Let's take a look at the album, which is available now on Cherry Red Records. Some of you still may be saying, but how can we have an Atomic Rooster album without Vincent Crane? Yeah, totally get that. Totally get that. So here is the booklet. There are the guys currently in the band. Lyrics. Another shot of the band. Another shot of the band. I'm not going to mention Steve Bolton, Adrian Gautry, Phil Everett, Shug Spencer, with Phil Wilson helping out a little bit on additional percussion. So, what does this album sound like, you might ask? Well, surprisingly enough, boys and girls, it sounds like an Atomic Rooster album. It really does. This guy, Adrian Gautry, nails the Hammond organ tone that Vincent Crane used to employ. It's pretty heavy in spots. It's rocking. It's kind of proggy in spots. The vocals aren't all that much different. If you look at their history, right, and you look at, they had, obviously, John Ducan did some vocals in the band. They had a former guitar player. Vincent Crane did some vocals. You had, like I mentioned, you had Pete French. You also had the Chris Farlow era, right? If you take all those singers and kind of put them into a blender together, that's kind of what you get here from Adrian, and Steve sings a little bit on the album as well. I don't know exactly which songs he's singing here. It's not that much different. I don't think that vocals were ever an absolute strong point in Atomic Rooster's sound, no matter who was singing with them. Chris Farlow, I thought, he's got a kind of a love it or not type of vocal style. I think he was always much, much better in Coliseum. But I thought he brought kind of a bluesiness to Atomic Rooster's sound. I always thought John Ducan and Vincent Crane had vocals that were suitable enough for the music. Obviously, I think that Pete French is probably the best singer out of all of them, but his time in the band was so limited. So kind of take all those voices, kind of put them together. That's what Adrian and Steve kind of give you here. They're not fantastic vocals, but they're certainly not terrible by any means. But here, what you're getting that very cool, kind of bluesy, heavy rock, slightly doomy, slightly proggy sound that Atomic Rooster, made famous, or maybe not all that famous, but that's the style they had. Now, granted, this album is not going to make you forget about Death Walks Behind You or the first Atomic Rooster album or even In Hearing of Atomic Rooster. For me, those are the three best albums. But you get some of that stuff. Some of these songs, you kind of listen carefully enough and you hear little bits of some of their classic songs. So they are kind of like retreading some musical themes here. Not surprising, right? They want to get the feel as close as possible to the classic albums. I totally get it. But saying that, if you take the Atomic Rooster name off of this and you just listen to this new album by this band called Circle the Sun, it's actually pretty good. It's pretty enjoyable. I kind of like it, right? We've got some fun songs on here. My favorite track by far is track number 6, which is No More. And the album is like 37 minutes and change, so it's really brief, 10 tracks. Nothing is longer than like 4 minutes or so. Everything is pretty quick. No More is really good. That takes me back to Death Walks Behind You, Atomic Rooster, as does Below That Mind. The last track, Last Night, also pretty damn rockin'. A lot of good, heavy Rampage and Hammond organ here. There's some good guitar work. Rebel Devil is kind of fun. That's very catchy, kind of quirky. You got tracks like Fly or Die. The title track is good. Walk With Me is good. There's really no bad songs on here. It's just, I know for some people this is going to be hard to take because, in essence, this band probably shouldn't exist in this fashion, right? It's kind of hard when, 2 of your 3 most important guys are no longer with the band or no longer alive. And I'm not even sure whether, I'd have to kind of look it up here, but I'm not even sure if their classic drummer is even still around. I know, Carl Palmer was their original drummer, right? But Paul Hammond also passed away. So Paul Hammond passed away in 1992, and he played on, a good chunk of their stuff. So really, so many of the classic members of this band either, are no longer with us or, did not care to participate. Would it have been cool if Carl Palmer took part in this? Yeah, maybe. He probably would never do that. But, I'm not even sure what Chris Farlow's been up to in more recent years, but I still think this is enjoyable for what it is. It's not going to, like I said, it's not going to make you forget those classic Atomic Rooster albums, but if you are enough of a fan of the band and you miss having that sound, right, that they were known for, this gives you that. It does give you that. I enjoy it for what it is. Like I said, it still sounds like Atomic Rooster, even though, those key guys aren't here. To me, this is a little bit different than, like, Nazareth continuing on after the passing of Dan McCafferty and no Manny Charlton involved, and most of the other, so basically you have the bass player, Pete is there, but you've brought in a singer who sounds absolutely nothing like Dan, right? Completely different, and I'm okay with that too, but the band just doesn't sound like Nazareth anymore. And to me, it's just kind of strange continuing on as the band. I know this may be contradictory to some other things that I say and believe, right? Because it's like I'm usually okay with bands continuing on that are severely limited as far as like original or long-standing members. I'm good with long-standing members. If some, you have an original lineup of a band, and then it starts to morph over the years, but then you have these other members on guitars, drums, whatever it might be, who play in the band for a long, long period of time, and they stay and keep the band going after those original members retire or pass away. I'm kind of okay with that because you've got lots of history with those members who came a little later on. The thing with the Nazareth thing is just kind of like, to me, it just doesn't, Nazareth's, it's such an identifiable band. And this is turning into a wholly other conversation here, but whereas you have like other, bands like, Journey, you got Arnel Pineda, who kind of sounds like Steve Perry. It still sounds like Steve Perry to me, or it still sounds like Journey to me. You got Neil Schon as the driving force behind the band, founding member from the beginning. So I can deal with that. Lynyrd Skynyrd's kind of like a weird sell nowadays because it's really just, Johnny Van Zant, but Johnny Van Zant's been fronting the band for 30 some odd years, close to 40 years. He's been the sound, the voice of Lynyrd Skynyrd forever, even though like so many of the other guys have passed away and are gone. So, I kind of still deal with that. This I'm okay with because it's a band that's been gone forever. It really still sounds like Atomic Rooster, and I really like Atomic Rooster. So I'm like kind of okay with this. As weird as that sounds. So your mileage may vary, right? Your mileage may vary. Anyway, it's turned into more of like a whole should these bands continue on type of thing. But anyway, I do like this. I'm going to give this 3.75 out of 5. It's not reinventing the wheel. It's not going to make you forget the classic Atomic Rooster albums, but it sounds close enough to that, and there are some pretty banging tracks on here. And it gives you the feels that you want from an Atomic Rooster album, even though it's really not Atomic Rooster. So anyway, check it out if you haven't already. Let us know what you think, and visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram all the damn time. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and click on that notification bell so you get alerted of all of our content as a post. And please do hit the like button before you leave. Also down below, we got the links to our Ko-Fi page for channel donations, our merch page, our Cameo page, and the Sea of Tranquility membership options, all down below. Thanks in advance for all your support, folks. It's greatly appreciated. And we'll see you soon here with more stuff. I'm Pete Pardo. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.